Hello and welcome to Meet the Manager, our regular catch-up with the best advice from some of the community's top FPL managers of all time. We will focus on those with an incredible rank history. We're adding to that by including managers with an interesting story to tell about how FPL is impacting on their lives. And we'll also focus on managers who are offering something a little different, a little unique to the FPL community. Hopefully this will propel them and us up the rankings. Today I'm joined by Dave Perrins, otherwise known as Simple Gull. He's a Brighton fan, but that's not why he is here. He has an excellent career history with 3 top 1,000 finishes. That's 2 more than I have, so it must be good. And he's committed to making FPL a family game, running a parents and kids league with some notable fantasy football managers and their sons and daughters taking part. Dave, welcome. How are you?
Hi Joe. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm doing good, thanks. Yeah, how are you doing?
Yeah, good. We're taking a bit of a break with the international break. So no scoutcast, no captaincy video, things like that. But so it's really welcome for me to get back behind the camera and do a Meet the Manager. And I'm so pleased that you managed to join us, because there's a variety of reasons, as I alluded to in the intro, for you to join us. And so before we look at your career history and some of your tips with for getting a high rank, especially with your fantastic career record, I wanted to talk to you about your mission to make FPL more family friendly. So I've got here in the notes, Big and Smalls League. What is the Big and Smalls League and how did that come about?
Yeah, so basically I started the Bigs and Smalls League at the start of the season. So my friend Andy Malcolm, who's on Twitter as well, actually, he used to live in Brighton, and he was visiting and having a chat with him and his son. And his son had a team and was saying, this is who I'm going to have in my team. I'm going to have Patson Daka, his son was saying, because don't know why. Yeah. And my son was like, oh, can I do one? Can I do one? So we decided that we'd start a mini league for me and Andy and our 2 kids. Okay. And then I just put out on Twitter and said, hey, does anyone want to come and join this league? And yeah, we got all sorts of people signing up. So we've got Mark Southerns, we've got FF Scout Anorak, we've got FPL Lens, we've got all sorts. We've got about 30 or 40 people in the league, and it's just a bit of fun, really, just a way to get our kids involved and to share our passion with them and to make it fun for them, really.
So this is the first season of this. It didn't take place last year, so I presume it's hopefully go from strength to strength with even more families taking part. Let's have a look at the top 10 in the league. So we'll have a look at the top 10 in the league, and then we can discuss some of the other people in it as well. So this is the top 10 of the Big and Smalls League. So in the top, it's mainly the dads so far winning over the children.
Yes.
And so we got Tom Butcher with AFC Whimsical at top. So where is the offsprings of Tom in this league?
Yeah, Tom's been leading since Gameweek 1 and difficult to catch up with. So his son is doing okay. It's George. Where is he?
I've got him now. 22nd in the league.
22nd. So basically every week we do this a mail out, and so for the kids we give out a gold, silver and bronze award for the best 3 scoring kids each week. So there's something to sort of incentivize them and that they can enjoy. So they get a little reward that way. And then we also in that we message out, okay, who's top overall, but who's top of the kids stuff. So Tom's been leading the way for the adults. George is doing okay as well. But yeah, it's Anorak's son who is top for the kids at the moment.
So Anorak is Tim Hill, and it's Tim's son Lucas is top of the kids. He's 9th place, 726. Definitely more than I've got, and certainly more than his dad has got. So where is Tim in the league? 13th he is. Just scrolling down it all. He's on 718. So not much in it. Just 8 points.
Yeah, there's a few kids ahead of their dads, definitely, who are doing better. Like Vinyl Richie, he's another one from the community, and his son's well ahead of him. And then, there's quite a few who kids are beating them. So quite a lot of good chat about that on our little group chat.
I noticed as well that Mark Southerns, in at number 18, but he's got a red arrow this week with 49. And his son Billy is dead on with 706 points. So Billy is now the master has become the pupil, the father has
Yeah.
become the son in terms of FPL.
Yeah,
So
might be time for Billy to take on the black box co-presenting with Az, I think maybe
oh,
because Mark's on the fall and Billy's on the rise. And yeah, each week we also give out a wooden spoon award to the worst adult and who's scored the worst. And this week that was Mark for the second week running. It was Mark, and this week he actually scored less than every single adult and every child, including 6 and 7 year olds. So not so good.
okay. Could you just repeat that last bit again?
Yeah, he lost to everyone, including the 6 and 7 year
Brilliant.
olds.
Okay, that's fine. Just in case anyone didn't get that. That's fantastic. I mean, there is obviously a bit of fun there,
Yeah.
but there's a serious element as well to this, because I know as a parent and as an FPL manager and indeed an FPL content creator, I can sit there on my phone and the kids might be talking and I'm sitting on my phone going, oh, who got the assist and how many bonus points has that goalkeeper got, and things like that. And I really shouldn't be doing that, really. I should be talking to my kids. And so this is a great way of involving them in FPL. Is that the case?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's where it come from, really. So me and Andy talk about FPL in front of our kids to each other and all that stuff. And I think really our kids have sort of just taken an interest in that because we're interested in it and talking about it. So it's that thing of like, oh yeah, what's that? Can I make a team? Can I do that? And I suppose it's that thing of, because you want to get that balance right. We're a bit obsessed with FPL. We know that, and that can obviously encroach into family life, like what you're saying. But hopefully, this is a way that sort of by them showing a bit of enthusiasm for it, we can get them involved in it. And yeah, from my perspective, my son's only 7 who's in it, but he's loved having his team this season. He's always asking me to change it. So I messaged the guys before I come on this, and they're saying the same thing of just talking to their kids, going through what their teams are like. Mostly the kids just get on with it, and by the sounds of it, don't take a lot of advice from the grown-ups because and they're doing fine for it. But yeah, it's lovely to actually share what my passion is with my kids. And I've got a daughter as well. She's only 5, but she's now saying, oh, I want to do one too. So
right.
and yeah, so she wants to get Zuma in her team because Zuma is in Paw Patrol, and she knows there's a footballer called Zuma. So he scored at the weekend. I was watching the game and she was like, Zuma.
So it's
fun.
Marcus Rashford, for example, is in a lot of teams and things like that. I mean, when it comes to the kids playing it as well. So us adults, us massively boring, statty, nerdy adults, are looking at the stats. We're looking at expected goal involvement and all these types of things. What's driving the kids' decisions, do you think?
Yeah, so I asked the guys this actually because I thought it'd be interesting to find out what's going on and how much sort of balance they get. And obviously the kids aren't reading the stats, but a couple of them apparently are beginning to tune into some podcasts. Ooh. So that's quite fun. Yeah, so that's good. And yeah, I think it's mostly, I mean, there was a lot of England players in the kids teams after the summer because I think so lots of Mason Mounts and, Harry Kanes and, all these sorts of players. But I think Andy Malcolm made a good point. He was saying, there's no history for them. So like he was saying to his son, like Kane could be a good pick because good fixtures coming. And he was like, no, Kane, he's only got 1 goal. Why would you ever buy him? Like that's rubbish. And they haven't got that historical bias basically that we do. And I think a lot of it is just sort of, you watch a snippet of a match or maybe the highlights, whatever, and they just seem to pick the players that are doing well. And to be fair, it's actually working quite well for quite a lot of them. And equally, it's like, it's about Patson Daka being in Andy's son's team, and you get some fairly like irrational picks from an FPL player's perspective. But one of the other guys, Invertebrated, who's on Twitter, was saying that his son's going to pick Chris Wood this week because even though his son's a Man City fan, he's decided that he loves Chris Wood and that he thinks he's a great player. So Chris Wood is going in his team this week. So
very
I think
wise.
It's just
very wise.
Yeah. Well, maybe it'll work out. Who knows? But it's just one of these things where I think for them it's just fun and it's an engaging way of playing football and getting involved in fantasy, really.
Yeah, definitely. I find it interesting because it's as adult fantasy Premier League managers, we are bogged down by our history in it. We have got these certain rules and perhaps some of those rules shouldn't be in case. Perhaps you should just take a hit for a good player, and why not get that player if they're good, and why not just look at the basic stats like have they scored rather than are they expected to score. And I find it quite interesting to do that. And I think perhaps us as adults could learn something from that and sort of start from scratch, really.
Yeah, I mean, there's always those moments where you have to reassess. I remember the season that Leicester won the league, and like I spent so long not getting Jamie Vardy in because I was just he's going to stop scoring. There's no way that Leicester are going to keep this up. There's no way Vardy's going to keep scoring. Same with Yaya Toure when he had his good season. You know, it's these players where sometimes we're a bit blinded by our preconceptions, I think.
Definitely. Well, let's move on to your career as well. So I'll put your career history up, and it's a long one, 2006-7, which I think is about 2 or 3 years before I started. But we can see you've had a real mixed bag of finishes. But nestled in there are these 3 top 1,000 finishes. One of which in the top 500. One I'm in 505th, and you've got 2 more within the top 10k as well. You've got some others, a bit lower, sort of the 200k, 300k mark. But that's a lot of high finishes. So how would you describe sort of overall your way of playing? Are you a risk taker, risk averse, patient? What's your overall strategy?
Yeah, I think so. I basically go for. I would say I'm a relatively low risk in one sense. So I don't take lots of hits. I'm patient. I sort of let it unfold. I go bit by bit with the way that I approach the game. But actually, I'm quite up for just going for the maximum returns that I possibly can. So, for instance, I'm up for doubling or tripling up on a defensive unit. If I think they're going to do well, I'll back that. I'm not afraid to go all in on something. And equally, I'm quite up for if I see an opportunity to go against the crowd. So, for instance, at the moment, Salah's a very popular captaincy option. I don't think now is a good time to go against the crowd, but there's been other times in other seasons where I've sort of deliberately taken another route and try because I think there's more points in it potentially. And yeah, I'm quite up for if I think something could happen or is likely to happen, even if it's an unpopular move, then that's something I'll always try and do. So I think that probably lends itself to high finishes or low finishes because you can do really well on it and you can get well ahead, or you can just crash and burn.
Definitely. My dog obviously approves, making a rare video appearance for a while. I've been quiet for a while. So looking at those 3 top finishes there, what was common to those 3? What made those 3 such standout seasons? And also, just to follow on from that, what perhaps might it take to push on even further, get into the, say, top 100, win it even?
Yeah, good question. I mean, there's always the thing of there's a lot of luck involved, isn't there? And you FPL is all about trying to make good choices within a sort of a fairly broad set of choices, and then ultimately there's a bit of variance, all that stuff. So there's definitely some luck in the mix there. But I think the seasons that I did really well, I tended, just to get ahead of the curve a little bit. I think in the decisions that I made, and then stick with your gut. So if you think, like I said, those seasons, I think one of them I got on the Chelsea defence early and had a lot of Chelsea defence, and it just sort of that just carried me up through the league. And even like captaining players like Ivanovic, who people often say don't captain a defender, but if you've got, say, 3 Chelsea defenders and one of them's Ivanovic, and you think you're basically saying I'm backing the Chelsea defence to propel me up the league, and you name it as like this is my way of moving, and you're going to live or die by it. But actually, I remember that one of the seasons, like that sort of approach really paid off. And equally, like I think one of the seasons, I was in the top 10 at one point in one of my seasons, about halfway through, trying to chase. I was a big man backer was in front of me that season, and he had a very similar team to me. And I remember trying to differentiate I went against David Silva, and I went for Nasri instead. And it's that thing of like it didn't work out. I'd slowly dropped down the ranks and I got about 500th or something. So it's that thing of sometimes that's really going to work. And if that season, if Nasri had have exploded and Silva had been a bit quieter, then maybe, I'd be looking at a top 10, top 100 finish. But, that's not always to be. And I think you've just got to go for those brave choices and stick with it. And on the flip of that as well, like it's that thing of jumping off players at the right time, because everyone points chases sometimes. And I think, like Rafinha right now is a good example. He's someone who's had a really good run. The fixtures are turning for him now, and it's so tempting to keep him. And sometimes that's the right thing, and sometimes not. But I think it's being confident enough to say, actually, I think the returns are going to dry up, and there's another opportunity here, so I'm going to go there, and not being stubborn and sticking to players just because they've provided returns in the last few weeks. It doesn't necessarily mean they will in weeks to come.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of the seasons where it didn't go right? And I mean, is that what you were talking about there in terms of those decisions went in your favour, and you the timing of those decisions went in your favour, and these other seasons were they ones where you took that risk and it just didn't pay off?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I didn't take it very seriously. It was when I was at uni playing with mates, and it wasn't like something that it was just a bit of fun. And then basically after, it sort of slowly became a obsession as it does for many of us. The last couple of seasons I've struggled. I've had pretty poor rank finishes, I think. And I think there's different factors. Like, there's been some bad luck where I've had good luck in good seasons. I think I had some bad luck in those seasons. But also some poor choices, like impulsively wildcarding last season. At one point, I had a nice plan in place that probably would have helped me move up. And I got a bit of FOMO. I think FOMO is such an enemy in fantasy football. And I got a bit of FOMO of 2 or 3 players that I didn't have. I sort of threw everything in, played my wildcard. It was such a mistake. I don't know how many points it cost me, but certainly probably a couple 100,000 in rank, I would have thought. And so I've had moments like that. Had a bit of bad luck with, like I say, like COVID. I played my wild card the week that the lockdown hit. So I sort of lost my. Yeah. Oh, did you? Yeah.
Exactly the same thing. And it also completely derailed my season, because probably like you had a wonderful plan to prepare for a blank game week, go in on Jack Grealish, etc. And then suddenly 3 months passed. We had effectively a free wild card, and then they gave everyone else a wild card as well.
Yeah, it was just one of those things. I remember the Man City Arsenal game. I think was the one that got postponed, and I'd set up for this week with all my extra Arsenal Man City players and a plan out, and it was like, don't want those players anymore. But I'm not blaming the whole season on that. It was one of those things. But I think I've had some. Oh yeah. I mean, why not? It's like, it has an asterisk by it. Yeah. But that I feel like last season as well. In the end, I got to. I remember you having a season like this actually, Joe, like quite a few years ago from the Scoutcast, where it got to a point where I was struggling. It wasn't good, and I just started taking hits for fun, because ultimately it's about fun, isn't it? And like, I was trying to get to third in one of my cash leagues as well. And I'm just going to just play the way I normally don't and have some fun with it. Yeah. My rank suffered for it, but honestly, it's like, by the point I don't think I'm going to do very well, I may as well have some fun with it.
I see a lot of debate about taking hits, and I think it's the attitude with hits often is, if it's strategic and if it's 1 hit, 2 hits, it's fine. But the approach you took, and indeed I took as well that particular season, is you just do it every week. So it's impossible to climb up the rankings, because no matter how well your game week is, you're always about 8 points behind everyone else. So it shows that strategy. And that particular season, I did better when I stopped taking hits and I just moved away. I sort of was I didn't overmanage, I undermanaged. And do you think that is a particularly helpful strategy now, under managing? Just I'd say that in an era of so much content and noise, and does it help to step back?
Yeah, I mean, I really think that. So I'm not a big person for stats, to be honest. Like, I don't go in for loads of that. I try not to overthink it. I know that people don't like that phrase, but at the end of a game week, I'll often sort of try and make a plan in my head. So come Sunday night, Monday night, whatever it is, I think, okay, I think I'm going to bring in, Jota next week. And basically, unless something really sways me, something really persuasive, some stats, or, someone puts something that thinks, actually, that's a bad idea, then probably 9 times out of 10, I'll stick with that original plan, because it's easy to blame other things, other people. But last couple of seasons is when I've really been much more active in social media, Twitter, all that sort of stuff. And I do think that actually it's taken me a couple of years to learn to manage the noise and all of the different stuff, and that FOMO and maybe I should jump on this player, or here's a clever plan, and you sort of go down these alleys. But I feel like so much of it is like, you just got to play your own game. And actually, it's a very simple game at the end of it, isn't it? It's, I think that thing of undermanaging is good. Like, it reinforced to me that too many hits is just really damaging to your team. So this season, I really tried to commit to myself that I would take as few hits as possible, which is how I always used to play. I think I've only taken 2 hits so far. And basically, if it's all possible, just trying to avoid that, I think is a good plan, especially if you trust your players more or less. Like, you've got a chance. They've always got a chance of returning when you don't expect it. I mean,
it's sort of like going, as you were saying, going back to basics, as you said, taking fewer hits like I used to. And that brings us back to the kids again, that they're coming to this new. So they're not coming to it with all these preconceptions, and I presumably they're not coming to it with hundreds and hundreds of people engaging on Twitter around it as well. They're just coming it to simply playing the game and playing it with their dads and mums.
Yeah,
well.
Exactly. Well, I think probably like for my son, the only sort of voice that he hears about fantasy football other than his is mine. So, he's got one person that he listens to and gets advice from. There's a guy in the chat saying, he captained Aubameyang last week. So his son was like, why should I listen to you? But, there's plenty of people like that on Twitter, right?
Yeah, exactly.
They're posting all sorts of stuff.
Exactly. It's wonderfully refreshing to hear this. Just a little bit about your sort of strategies as well. Do you have a particular favoured formation? I'm a very 3-4-3 kind of person. I always think there's a Chris Wood out there I want as a third striker. I don't want to close the door to Chris Wood. So that's me. What about you? Do you have a favoured formation?
No, so I would say not at all in terms of favourite formation, and I try and be as flexible as possible. So I usually would try and have 2 formations in my squad. So if I've got 12 or 13 players, I would never be like, I'm a 4-4-2 with just 2 subs. I would try and have 12 strong players normally. So I'm quite happy to play whatever. Like I played 4-5-1 this week. I'm happy with anything. So I try to be as flexible as possible with how I play and just try and follow whatever that season is doing. I'm actually looking at moving to a sort of a 5-4-1 as my main 11 shortly.
Okay, well that shows about the need to adapt to a particular game. So what you've got, I don't know whether you think this as well. I think we've got 2 things going on. We've got something that's been going on for years, which is a focus on wing backs. So defenders like Alexander-Arnold are effectively midfielders, wonderful. But at the same time, we're having the Giroud-ification of forwards. They're all just becoming that bloke who's in the way, while all the wingers and wingbacks are scoring and assisting, and that does lend itself to 4 or 5 at the back. Is that?
It's very harsh on Olivier Giroud, but
he's wonderful at it though, and
it's true. It's true. I always feel like he's the asset who could have been like a 180 point a season guy, but it wasn't to be. I agree with that in terms of, I think this season you almost have to, you don't have to do anything, but like 4 at the back seems like so obviously straightforward in terms of points. I think forwards will come back at some point. It's inevitable. The likes of Jimenez, Wilson, Ings, like they'll have purple patches at some point, but you've just got to move with it as it is. And at the moment, it feels like there's so much value in defence and midfield that why go with more strikers than you need to, really?
Definitely. I think this is a theme that is going to run throughout this season and in seasons to come. And I think we're going to start seeing even people like me going for 4, maybe even 5 at the back on a regular basis.
And just to add to that, Joe, one thing as well, I said before about jumping on and off at the right time and knowing when to go against the crowd. I think that at some point in the season, there will be like a pivot moment where there will be a time to jump on forwards. And I think that the people who see that coming will be the ones who really get ahead in that window, because people will catch up within 3 or 4 weeks and everyone will have forwards again. But I think there'll be a point in the season where it's like, right, forwards again, and picking the right ones and going to the right 2 or 3 will be, I think, one of the key things.
So, for example, this season, Antonio, it's been marvellous so far in real terms and in expected terms, and will no doubt be again. The likes of Ronaldo, Kane, Lukaku, these are good players, and they may well score at some point. And meanwhile, you've got the likes of Calvert-Lewin, who's injured, will be coming back. Bamford coming back as well, and and the likes of Chris Wood and Armstrong and all of these others as well. So I do see what you mean. It's finding that moment. It's probably not at the moment. Could be next week. Could be the week after. Let's have a look at your game week 12 side. So this is what we've been talking about in action. So you're currently inside the top 50k. So another great season. Inside top 50k at the game week 12 mark is pretty good, I'd say. Take us through your team here. I can already see 5 at the back. So take us through your team.
So it's been a good start to the season. I was about 40k after 6 weeks, and I dropped quite heavily and played my wild card, and I've recovered basically since then. So yeah, 5-4-1, like you can see, I've got the Brentford guys on the bench, but quite happy if they come on, no problems with that. Although the form's not great, I feel like, they're good enough assets. They should return at some point. Yeah, I've got 5 at the back. I'm actually looking at potentially selling Livramento next week. I'm not going to sell him before Norwich, but I think Reece James just looks like too good an asset, and I really believe in the City defence. I think they're going to do really well, so I want a couple of spots in there for that. So my potential transfers this week, I'm wondering about, the plan was always Son and Jota in. I've got 3+ million in the bank to do Havertz and Rafinha to Son and Jota. I think I'm going to still stick with that probably, but I'm not feeling particularly confident in Son and Spurs at the moment. But he's an established asset, and I think there's a lot to be said for that. He's going to score at some point, isn't he? So that's what I'm looking at. 5-4-1 with those two coming in, and then the week after the next couple of weeks, I'd maybe look then at Tony and Livramento to James and Josh King.
Okay. Yeah, and Josh King would be presumably a good first sub in this setup.
Yeah, I'd have basically Bomo and Josh King as my 2 subs, playing subs. Okay. So yeah, I'm happy with those, and I'm happy to play them when they've got decent games if I want to or need to.
Yeah, it's interesting this is a very similar defence that I have. Instead I don't have Diaz, I have Cody instead. So Cody's just a permanent bench player. He's actually come on and got me points sometimes, but yes, expendable. So for those watching and listening who've got a Cody, it could be anyone. Just name any defender isn't one of the ones on your screen at the moment. They might be considering upgrading them to a Chilwell, a James, Reece James, Cancelo, perhaps another Man City defender. So yeah, we could be seeing that. What if you are wrong? I always ask that question myself. Harry Kane, Son, they absolutely fire. Ronaldo absolutely hammers Watford. Is looking a must over Christmas. How are you going to get to them?
That's a great question. I mean, it's good to have a plan out, isn't it, if needed? And obviously, spreading the funds through the team like that isn't necessarily optimal for that sort of flexibility. But what I'd say is Salah looks like I think he's a great captaincy option, and it looks like for the foreseeable future there's barely any games where it feels like I wouldn't really want to captain him. And I think one thing is to try and pick like a Ronaldo, for instance, because he's got some good games going. Pick a Ronaldo or a Kane and captain them as a way of swinging against Salah. But I don't want to swing against Salah. I think he's just looking too good. So my way is to say, well, I'll captain him. Is it really worth having a 12 million asset? Even if they score 10, 12 points in a week, can I spread those funds by instead of having a Kane, having a Josh King and putting that 6-7 million across my team? And I think if I'm not captaining them, for me, I can do that. So yeah, if Kane scores back-to-back hat-tricks, it's going to be tricky and I'm going to fall in rank. But that's where you can't have everyone, and you just have to make your choices. And right now I feel like Spurs aren't banging, Man United aren't banging, neither of them look like teams that I want to back. So I'm happy to go against them.
That's interesting, because like with the emergence of wing backs, the dropping off of forwards as assets, another trend within FPL has been: do you spread the funds, or do you focus on the sort of tried and tested potential captaincy candidates, even if you are going for Salah every week? And I guess as you're saying, if you're going to go for Salah every week, do you need the likes of Kane and Ronaldo? I'm still sort of unsure, so I've got a bit of those players, and also spreading a bit. And I think you could be right here.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I'm interested to know your opinion on this, but like, what's your opinion on the likes of captaining like a Cancelo, or a Reece James? I mean, I don't see why that's not an option. I've occasionally captained defenders in the past before, but it feels like they're better than ever. Why not have them as a second captaincy option?
Why not, indeed? And with the likes, so who are the best attacking FPL? Who are the best? I'll rephrase that. Who are the best FPL assets in the Chelsea squad at the moment? It's Reece James and Chilwell. Even with Lukaku back, it's those two. Yeah. So if you're going to captain a Chelsea player, why are people captaining Lukaku and Havertz and Mount.
Yeah.
They should be captaining Reece James and Chilwell.
Yeah.
If they're not going to play, then chances are this season they're not going to play at all. It could be a nervous wait if you see them on the bench. Will they come on? Have a good vice captain. But the way it's been with Chilwell, for example, is Alonso has either played all the 90 or not. So I think you're right, and I think going back to the kids again, going that they wouldn't think they would see they'd watch the game, and they're watching Reece James's amazing pass, which I still can't quite believe existed, for Havertz's goal in the last game week, and they're going to think, well, I'm going to captain that guy who's got a good fixture next week, and why not? I've captained Leighton Baines before and it worked out. I have wished I've captained Alexander-Arnold many times, and didn't. So I think you're right. I think Why not?
They're good captaincy options, and I think again it just further weakens the argument for Kane and Ronaldo. But when you go against these players, you've got to know, they can go big. Like Ronaldo's got Watford, hasn't he? And I think I wouldn't be surprised if he scored a hat trick in that game. But you can't have more. No,
definitely. I've got some slides put up. I wasn't going to put it up, but I'm going to put it up anyway. It was the expected goal involvement per minute. This is sort of a snapshot really of some of the players that are already in people's teams, that aren't in people's teams, that could be in people's teams, that could perhaps leave people's teams. And let's focus on Rafinha as well. So his minutes per XGI. It's every 192 minutes he's expected to be involved in a goal. That's pretty good. But it's not as good as, say, Salah, who you would captain. Mane as well, who everyone's ignoring, who would be a good way of getting Liverpool points if everyone's got Salah and Alexander-Arnold. And also it shows Antonio is still, you're getting on for just over a goal involvement every game. It hasn't been recently, but these figures show this is full season. It could be again. And then you've got the likes of Jota doing really well and Gallagher. Looking at some of these figures here, expected goal involvement per minutes, and just in general these sorts of players. What sort of players are you considering? You've already mentioned Rafinha ditching, but what Mane, for example? Have you locked yourself out of getting a Mane Salah double up?
I mean, I don't want it in terms of I'm happy with Salah, and I think Jota is. Even before the Firmino injury, I had Jota. I started the season with Jota, even though it was like he's going to get rotated. I've stuck with him quite a long time. I think he's a great pick season long. Even if he starts two, comes off the bench in the other one, I think he's going to be great value at 7.5. I think he's a gift. He really should be probably like 9.5 or more. So I'm quite happy with Jota as my third Liverpool asset. So I think Mane is a good, that thing of if you want to swing against Salah, Mane is a really good pick and it could pay off. But
this is in addition to. I would never suggest getting rid of Salah or even not captaining him. Yeah,
but I mean, Trent and Salah are basically as close to essential as it gets, I would suggest. And then you've got one spot left, and I think Jota's too good value to ignore. But in that list that you've got there, I think Bowen's a really interesting asset.
Isn't he?
I've got my eye on him for West Ham's fixture swing, and actually I think Rafinha and Bowen's fixtures. Well, I think Rafinha's fixtures are quite tricky, but I think after Rafinha plays Brentford, West Ham come into some good fixtures, so there's a potential swap point there. Gallagher's another one that's sort of tricky. One of the questions on my mind at the moment is can I justify the 10+ million, 10.3 on Son when you've got the likes of Bowen and Gallagher performing so well? But I don't really need the money. Is the thing.
No, well, let's put another slide up. This is the next 8 fixtures, so this might help you and hopefully those watching and listening make up their minds on some of those issues there. Crystal Palace have got one bad fixture. Well, is it about Manchester United? I don't think that is a bad fixture for Gallagher. So they've got great fixtures the next 8. Burnley, Villa, Leeds, Manchester United's defence, Everton, Southampton, Watford, Tottenham. I mean, Gallagher could get returns in all of them. So, that probably answers your question. Do you need Son if you haven't... Is Gallagher a better option to get in now over Son?
I think this is where with stats, I do like stats, but I'm not, sometimes I just feel like you've just got to go with your hunch a little bit. Like Son is a proven asset. He always scores loads of points. He's a great player. Spurs are a bit dodgy. His form's not great, but when you look at those next four for Spurs, Leeds, Burnley, Brentford, Norwich, I mean, for an attacker,
Yeah.
other than arguably Burnley away, you really couldn't ask for much more in those four. And it just feels like I think originally I'd thought about saving my wildcard for this little window and doubling up on Kane and Son, and I'm quite happy that I haven't done that. But on paper, it looks almost irresistible, and I think that's why I just feel like I want to get one of them.
Okay. Looking at those, you mentioned Tottenham's fixtures. They're top, along with Manchester United. Manchester United only really have Chelsea as a bad fixture. But I would say that the Watford's a great fixture, but Arsenal, Crystal Palace could be quite poor for Ronaldo in terms of attacking threat in comparison to, say, Son, who has Brentford, Norwich, or indeed Palace, who has Leeds and Manchester United, who are actually among the worst defences. But look at the way they dovetail: Manchester United, Tottenham. Game week 16, as Tottenham face Brighton's defence, which we know is great at the moment, Leicester, Liverpool, and then Crystal Palace. At that same time, Manchester United have Norwich, Brentford, Brighton, that's the tough one, and then Newcastle's 3 out of 4. Really good fixtures there.
Yeah.
If you're going for Son, would you be looking at, now I mentioned Marcus Rashford earlier, a player like Rashford, this sort of differential that's got good fixtures, a kid's pick.
Yeah, a kid's pick. Yeah, could go for that. I mean, yeah, maybe. I mean, I think the thing with Rashford, so I've got Foden and the Chelsea fullbacks I have, Cancelo, players that are sort of considered rotation risks, Jota. So I'm up for rotation risks as long as the potential returns are good. So Rashford could be one to look at, I think, if he shows that he's fully fit and getting in the team quite regularly. But the way I sort of operate is I try to sort of look two weeks at a time almost, and basically I could easily move, say, if I've got King and Son by that point, I could look at moving like King to Ronaldo, Son down to Brownhill or something. Right. So I think I'll try and save 2 transfers if I can for that Man United fixture swing. But they could go great again, but still under Ole, I just think it just doesn't look good for them. And sometimes you just got to say, like, teams are not playing well. And I don't know if I can resist a Man United player altogether for that run. I'd looked at De Gea, actually, funny enough. I changed my goalkeeper the week just gone. I bought in Sanchez. I did seriously consider De Gea because of their fixture run, but they're just not looking good, are they? But, if I can be 2 transfers away from anyone, then that's a decent enough place to be, I think.
I mean, going back to the strategy there, I mean, that shows the benefit of having Son or indeed Kane or Ronaldo. It's just that player that you've got that flexibility. So do you feel that with let's go back to your team again, with 5 at the back, you feel it needs a Son in there, at least a Son in there, to give you that flexibility?
Yeah, I mean, it's helpful. I wouldn't say it's essential, but it is helpful. But it's a tricky one because if Son was 6.5, for instance, would I pick him? And you think, given the way that budgets are, I try not to think of him as an expensive asset as such. But it is helpful in terms of to move on and off, and to sort of some players can be a bit of a bank. And I think Salah's money is not accessible; that's locked up. But someone like Son, his money is accessible, and equally, like, if I did decide I wanted to jump off I'll hopefully have double City, double Chelsea defence. So if I did decide to jump off one of those, I could really downgrade one of those to like a Ben Johnson and pull some money out there. So yeah, if you're I always think, if you've got 2 free transfers and you can use those to move to any player, or potentially take a -4 and rejig a little bit, then I'm happy enough with that.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be interesting what happens in the big and smalls league, and it could be that the kids march on. So we've got Anorak's son is in the top 10 at the moment. It could be by the end of the season that Mark's son, your son, and so on are the top 10, and all the dads and mums are low down in the list as well. I just want to mention as well, because you have in your job as well, you have an interest in helping families and supporting particularly dads. So tell us a bit about your business and sort of how it relates to FPL in a way.
Yeah, so I'm interested in family stuff in general, I guess, but I run a course for first-time dads, so for men who are expecting their first babies. So we do a course that covers everything from like how to change a nappy and how to burp a baby and feed them and all that stuff, through to what's it going to be like becoming a dad? What's the reality like? What's the good stuff? What's the hard stuff? And sort of trying to help guys prepare for that. Because you know what it's like? It's a huge shift, isn't it? And a huge change. And when I became a dad, I loved it. And I do love being a dad, but I was like, this is full on. And I wish that I'd had a little bit more help and support along the way. So I started that 6 years ago to sort of try and help men who are going into that journey just get a bit of extra support for mental health, for their be a better dad, be better for their partner, play a more active role. Like my partner and I ended up splitting the childcare 50-50, and I feels like that was brilliant. And I really want to encourage more men to just embrace fatherhood, I guess, and to get the support that they need to do the best they can. So so like with the bigs and small stuff, that's a nice little bonus. Now my son's 7, it's not about nappies anymore. It's about how can I engage him? How can we have good chats? How can we have fun together? How can I help get to know him better for who he is and encourage him in the things that he loves and all that sort of stuff? So I'm definitely not a parenting expert, but I feel like, the opportunity to have fun with people is great. And through what I do with the dad course, that's about helping people get a good start and get them off on the right foot for everyone's good, really. And bigs and smalls is, I guess, maybe just an extension of my passion for trying to be a good dad, maybe. But if any dads or mums are watching and want to join the bigs and smalls, then drop me a DM on Twitter and get involved. We're doing I think it's mostly 12s and unders, but we're flexible.
Excellent. And what a fitting set of messages to leave this episode with. The importance of family, FPL obviously, but making FPL and family together important. Thanks so much for your time, Dave. Good luck with the rest of the season. Good luck to your son. Hope he beats you. And I hope all the other sons and daughters all beat their dads and mums in your league. Thanks a lot for joining me.
Cheers. Thanks for having me, Jay. Thanks so much.